Hey, buddy, welcome to What the Talk. This is our bonus show. We record this live each and every week exclusively on patreon.com/whatthetech. I'm Andrew Aaron. I'm joined by the one, the only, Mr. Paul Thurrott.
How you doing? We didn't talk about a couple of things.
Oh, God, we did not talk about a lot of things. So what I thought we would do is add this on the bonus show, put this out there on Patreon, but also release this for everybody else to watch because 2016 was a terrible year for technology, and there's so much to talk about, and it's really hard to stick to 1 hour. So what we're going to do is talk about the remainder of the show and the remainder of the stuff on our list on What to Talk. We did talk about Microsoft and Samsung for the entirety of today's What the Tech, and there was a lot.
More.
There's so much more, and there's so much more with Microsoft as well. But it was, you know what? Looking at this list, and the more we're talking about this, the more I'm realizing you're absolutely right. This was a bad year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yahoo,
for
example. This is a company that was valued at somewhere north of $145 billion, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that category, somewhere in that area during the dot-com bubble. Microsoft tried to buy them in 2007-ish for, I want to say, $45, $46 billion. They fought that tooth and nail. Verizon agreed to buy them this past year for $4.8 billion, like a 1/10 of the Microsoft amount, basically. And then they announced, hey, by the way, 3-4 years ago, 500 million of our accounts had been hacked, and we just found out. Isn't that hilarious? And that's bad enough, but this past week they announced that an additional 1 billion accounts had been compromised a year earlier than that, and they just found out. So now Verizon might not buy them, but let's suffice to say that 1 billion plus people are out in the world whose personal identity might have been compromised by some hacker group from China or from Russia or who knows, Eastern Europe, it doesn't matter. Not a good company.
No.
I think
this is
they've gone from circling the drain to racing down the drain pipe. Yeah. I think.
Well, I mean, these are signs always of a company that is in limbo, waiting to get bought and passing the buck to another company.
US Air, not to be able to do it. I think
US Air had a very
away.
Similar story. I mean, not necessarily with we're talking about the airlines, but they were notoriously known during the term of, I guess, the merger or the purchase. Right. Of just passing a buck and saying it's not us, we're getting bought, we don't care. And when you are a technology company that billions of resources and income is being put into, and it's not a good way to kind of say, hey, by the way, why do you think they just discovered it now? Did they get a new internal auditor or?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it was part of a due diligence process. I have no idea. I don't know that they've said. I don't know. So in some ways, I don't care. I mean, if you have a Yahoo account for some reason, you're probably not listening to the show unless you just forgot about it.
No, but you know what? Do you have a Flickr account?
Yeah, I used to. I just closed my Yahoo account, so I don't anymore.
So I mean, that would play a part in it.
Yeah, sure. So I got rid of it. I'm not going to deal with this. I just give me a break. This is. I don't understand this company, so I gave up, and I've walked away, and I think you should too.
So here's someone in our chat room says, I deleted my Yahoo Flickr account last week. Yeah, I first signed up for Yahoo in 1996.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I go back that far, but I definitely go back somewhere in the 10 to 15 year range. I mean,
so here's a question for you.
I paid for Flickr. Remember when you had to do that?
Yeah, I paid for. Wow, my God! You know what? I most likely probably. No, they canceled that whole thing.
Yeah, now you get a terabyte for free, but back in the day, it was a pro account or whatever, and you paid for it. It wasn't that much. I mean, it was probably $20 or $30 a year,
but it was cheap.
But I paid for it, and
what was the other service that Yahoo had that they canned that people used? Oh, God, what was it?
I don't remember.
Crap. It was a like a bookmark tool, right? Didn't they own that bookmark tool that they can't? I don't know what it was, but how is it that
I would like to never have to write about Yahoo again,
Delicious.
Michael.
Yeah, wasn't it Delicious?
Yeah, it could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't care.
How is it that Yahoo has chugged along so long? After all these years, they're still surviving this.
No, they've been around forever. They were so big. It takes a lot. Big companies don't typically explode and disappear. They go out over a very long period of time. They fade away. That's what happens. I mean, you can go for a long time on inertia. So, like I said, I don't know the year, but 1998-ish, they were worth 140 something billion.
Jeez.
2007, they weren't worth, but Microsoft was willing to pay 46 billion.
Why? Just for the properties?
Yeah, they were going to combine it with their Windows Live stuff. The web was the next big thing, or the internet. And then today they're worth 4.8 billion. I mean, 1 year from now, with all this information about all the compromised accounts and the expected exodus of customers, they're going to be worth $1 billion. I mean, at some point, what Verizon is really buying is not so much Yahoo's intellectual property; it's Yahoo's customer database, right? That's something that can now disappear pretty quickly. So we'll see what happens.
Their value is plummeting at this point.
Stupid.
Also on the list, we kind of touched on this, but smartphones were pretty boring this year.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have anything to add to that. I mean, beyond the fact that
nothing big.
There were some great, the iPhone big launch, the Pixel. Google came out with their own phone. Samsung, the Galaxy S7. These are all excellent upgrades, but smartphones are boring.
You know what's interesting? So to kind of go connected with smartphones are wearables, and I totally agree with you on this. They are still terrible, and I thought this year would have been the year that we saw, major steps in the right direction with wearables, with the bands and the watches. We did not get that much of an improvement over 2015.
Right. In some cases, if you look at individual features, you got to step back. Go from the Nexus 6P to the Pixel XL, you lose stereo speakers.
Oh, with the phone. You're saying with the phone.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going back to the phone. So I'm sorry. I mean, that's what happened. So, the iPhone camera, I don't think is as good as the previous iPhone camera.
Yeah.
I base that on having taken thousands of photos. It's not some like stupid little opinion Paul has. It's like I can compare photos. I think they've taken a step back.
I took a couple photos with the iPhone 7 with the Plus. Yep. And I have to tell you, I was not as impressed as I thought I would be.
No, they're washed out.
Yeah. And the low light.
Something's wrong with it. It's not as good. Low light isn't as good.
Yeah.
The Pixel and the iPhone, and maybe the Samsung too. You would know this because you use one. The one thing you do get is faster performance, which I like. And there were phones like the Nexus 6P or earlier Lumias that have really nice cameras, but the performance was slow on the camera. These things perform well. I mean, and that's a step up. There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, the photo quality is what you're looking for. I see the pictures you post with your camera, and they're unbelievable. And some of my pictures are pretty good, but they're not as universally good as they were at the 6S.
I think it really has to do with. Listen, maybe. Do you think they're forcefully holding back on this, or do you think it's just this is where we are in the market, and we're waiting for someone to do something huge, and then everybody else responds?
No, I think it's hard to make big leaps now. These things are mature. So, one of the big innovations in the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus is the optical zoom. It's the first time in a mainstream phone that we have optical zoom. Right, that's awesome. But it's like 2x optical zoom. I mean, let's put this in perspective. You could buy a $99 camera that gets 24, 28, 32, whatever optical zoom. I mean. These things have, you're talking about a device that's like really, really thin. So there's only so much space in there for the actual optics. So things move slow. Yeah, I think that's, and we can all kind of nod our heads and agree that this makes sense, but makes it kind of boring, doesn't it?
Do you think it's a plateau? Do you think we've hit a technology plateau when it comes to thinner, lighter, faster, better? Where now we're in this stage where we're just constantly evolving until the next big boom. And I constantly talk about this. We got really spoiled for like 2-3 years. We had the iPad come out, which was, I mean, just not even something that people understood really could happen. We had the iPhone, we had the iPad, we had all these phones happen, and now we are matured as a market.
Yep, it's boring.
Boring.
So
what would you like to see, Paul?
It doesn't mean that the stuff isn't good. No, it's not what I want to see. I mean, I want to be surprised. I look to the next gen, and I look. Someday we're going to have 5x or 10x optical zoom in a camera and a phone, and that to me will be exciting.
Yeah.
Obviously, speeds get better, screens get better. Everything gets better. I mean, will VR, AR, mixed reality take off? We'll see. Is it something that's going to happen in the next 3 months? No. So, bots are kind of interesting, but right now bots are really kind of basic, frankly, and it's like talking to an Infocom game from the early 1980s. It's not very sophisticated.
So, you know what's interesting? I was talking to a photographer about this. I was at a bar, and I overheard a guy next to me talk, and I jumped in, and we were talking about phones, and he was saying how he was really concerned about the iPhone and the portrait mode because and the advances in this phone technology, because he said he was really concerned because now everybody's taking good photos. So it's less likely, not necessarily your wedding, like we were talking about, like hiring and the way that it makes money. He goes, it's not that like the weddings I'm going to lose out on, or like major events like that, but I am losing on like kids' first birthdays because everybody's phone.
Andrew. The very notion of a person who comes to your home to take pictures is ridiculous.
It is.
I used to, when I was a kid, my parents took me to Sears to take photos in some back room up in the back of the store. I'm sorry. Let me give you an interesting Freakonomics style factoid. Tell me what you think of this. I found this to be fascinating. It's semi-related. I used to work in banking in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and one of the big concerns we had as bank employees was that ATM machines. And remember, back then we had ATM cards, right? They weren't debit cards.
Yeah.
They were ATM cards. You literally could just use it to get cash. That's what it was. It was an automated cash machine, essentially. We felt, as tellers and as customer service people, et cetera, ATMs are going to be the end of tellers, right? That we're going to lose jobs. The banking industry will contract from an employee count standpoint because they won't need us anymore because of ATM machines. So the question I pose to you now is, it's 30 years later. Did that happen?
No, it did not.
Do you know what really happened?
What happened? More tellers were hired? Yeah.
Yeah, the opposite. And you want to know why? Because the popularity of ATM machines, which now, of course, serve debit cards and have a much bigger role in people's lives, whatever. But anyway, the popularity of ATM machines, just as they were in 1985 or whatever, caused banks to open more branches because people wanted to get cash wherever they were. They had to hire more employees to work in those branches. Yeah. And the truth is that the banking industry in the United States of America, at least, this is for the U.S., has seen, over the past 30 years, a dramatic increase in employment among tellers. The very group of people who are worried about their jobs being lost because of automation.
Well, this is exactly what you have said. He said that now, because of the fact that everybody has a smartphone, nobody's taking decent photos, they kind of appreciate better photos, and now he's getting hired more.
There you go.
For gigs.
See? Nothing to worry about.
No,
here's a fun thing you might have seen.
How great it is.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. I thought you were complaining.
No.
You might have seen if you go to like a wedding these days, people will do fun things to kind of bridge the gap between the professional guy with his ginormous camera and then the little people with their smartphones, right? Because people can take smartphones at a wedding, but maybe someone sets up a site, you can all share your photos. But a lot of the weddings I've gone to over the past several years, they'll actually put like disposable cameras around
on desk, yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun because it engages people, and you're kind of part of it. And anyway, I don't mean to say that every time an issue like this arises that it's actually the opposite, but it's interesting. I think the photographer thing falls in the same category.
But
now you've told me.
To kind of go back, to kind of step back. By the way, this kid is staring at the camera, right? At the camera that I have, and she's waving at me.
See, what you can't hear is she's actually recording a podcast.
She is recording a podcast right now.
Yep.
She's waving.
And it's called
"Get Me the F Out of Here."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My parents have abandoned me. Call CPS or whatever.
Yeah. I'm just an effing baby. So what he was we ended up having a conversation about photography and the advancements on the camera. You going? Okay, I'll see you. I'll see you in a few. Coco, his name is Coco, by the way. The guy that's staying with me. His Nick, we call him Coco. He's leaving right now. So the whole conversation here that we had was we were talking about advancements in phone technology and cameras, and said, here's the great thing, because I've been a photographer for 20-something years, and the technology kind of slowed down for a long time until a couple of years ago, and now every year, lower end entry level phone cameras like DSLRs, like the for him lower level is $1,000 DSLR. These are getting better and better. They're shooting 4K video. They're taking full frame instead of full frame photos. They're doing a higher with the digital with the mirrorless. They're shooting 11 frames per second. He goes, this stuff has trickled down, and it's gotten so inexpensive. But every couple of years, it slows down and gets better, slows down. So I think that's where we're at right now with smartphones. We're in the slowdown period where it's going to be a little bit, and then we're going to get this big boom again.
Okay.
I
hope you're right.
Well,
because this year, for the most part, was
terrible. Terrible. What else do we have on the list?
The usual Microsoft complaints. I don't write about this too much because I kind of focus on the future, but Windows 7 and Windows 8.1, if you have this system, one of these systems, try to update it with Windows Update, you'll find in many cases, and certainly in all cases for me, it just sits there and it never updates. And there's all these workarounds out on the web for making this work. But here's the thing. Microsoft, seriously, just fix this. This is the majority of your customers right here. 2/3 of all instances of Windows are running these systems. Like, it boggles the mind that this is still a problem, and yet this is still very much a problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't see it a lot because, again, I don't run the system normally, but every time I do, it's a freaking nightmare. And of course, I'm going through this thing in my house where I'm trying to get rid of all my old computers and devices. And so I've been resuscitating a bunch of Windows 7 and Windows 8 devices, restoring them and then trying to get them up to date. And it's like it's a disaster. It's infuriating.
You want to touch on the MacBook Pro before we end it?
Yeah. So right. It's impossible to talk about the worst part about this year without talking about the MacBook.
Can I jump
Pro.
in really quickly? And then I want to hear your opinion. I used this thing for a couple hours. The MacBook Pro, the new one.
Okay. Yep.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. I'm sorry. Like I rarely go to an extreme like that, and I always tell you, like, well, this is nice, and obviously it's faster, it's lighter, it's thinner, all that stuff. Touch bar looks nice. The trackpad is a little too big.
Yeah, a little. Yeah.
Right? It's a little.
Yep.
And no, honestly, it's just a little too big. It's not like, oh my God, this thing is in the way. It's just a little too big, especially on the 13-inch model. The keyboard is atrocious. It's
unusable, atrocious. Yep.
It's not as bad as the MacBook, but
that's like saying it's not as bad as writing notes in the sand and hoping a plane overhead sees it.
It's no, Paul. Like, it is. Have you had long-term, like, did you type on this thing for a while?
I did not for a long time.
Okay, I did like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I was making. I mean, obviously, there's always an adjustment, right? When you go from key to key. Like, if I give me a Lenovo, and I'll still have like a hard time adjusting. You got to kind of just get the groove of it.
Yeah.
I have this keyboard here that I've had for years, and I rarely type on it, and I still make errors when I'm typing. But you give me like 30 minutes, and I got it. This keyboard is miserable to type on, especially if you write. If you type a lot, it's bizarre. I cannot understand, because this was one of the top things. The keyboard and the trackpad are the two of the things that I tell people, especially anybody that does a lot of writing, you want to be comfortable when you're writing. And Lenovo's are great, but Lenovo's kind of, in my opinion, they kind of went backwards also in the last couple of years with a lot of their line. Not necessarily the higher-end ThinkPads, but the rest of the line of the Lenovo's, they've kind of gone backwards. Okay. This is not a tiny step. This is a major leap.
Oh no, it's a disaster. It is lit. If you're a writer, it's unusable.
It's really, really bad. And I know the complaints about the MacBook. I know people that write, like, I had a Lenovo, and go into this, these chiclets are not necessarily great to type on, but the actual execution of the key, right? When you press the key, It feels good. The placement feels good on this. On the new one, it's terrible.
Andrew, again, because you've made me into an Apple freak, I've gone back and watched a lot of
Mac users
Apple
don't
keynotes.
Write.
No, but if you go back and watch the event for this device, they talk about keys and how keys are pressed and how if you hit the edge of a key, it kind of like pushes in at kind of an angle and it's inaccurate and, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I've been paying a lot of attention to how the keys on, say, my Surface Book press in when I hit them on the corner or in the middle. And you know what? They don't do that. They press in normal and they work great. And here's a little heads up for Apple. That keyboard you have on your MacBook Air, the keyboard you have on your previous generation MacBook Pro, those work great.
Yeah.
And if you can't fit that keyboard in that device, heads up, make it a little thicker.
Yeah.
It's a Pro device.
Yeah, it's a Pro device, yeah.
If this thing was a millimeter thicker or something, not only would no one notice, no one would care. And you could just say, hey, look, we could have made this thing even thinner, but we know the typing experience matters to you. You're a professional. And by the way, you just spent $2,700 on a laptop, and I don't know, maybe you want to type on it.
Yeah.
This is the most egregious example ever of Apple hubris and form over function. It's gross, and it ruins this device. The rest of it is ridiculous. The Play School touch bar thing and the
you know what? I didn't hate
whatever.
I did not hate the touch bar as much as other people. I just find it to be somewhat pointless.
Well, but Andrew,
it's not a natural way. Do you know why? I'm going to tell you why it's not a natural way of doing it, okay? When we type, we don't, advanced typers don't look down, right? We're typing. We're just typing. We're typing. We're typing. We're looking at the key, maybe a little glance here and there. I caught myself having to stare down almost every time I tried to do something, whether it's turn the brightness down or change the volume or just pull something up or within the application using a key. I caught myself, and it takes way longer. I mean, every time I would do the volume, I had to look down. And you don't get used to that. It's not a natural feel of the key.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
It's
terrible. It's terrible.
Also, the other problem is every application has their own placement of keys and buttons and features. So,
yeah, it's not good.
Listen, it's not. It will get there. I'm sure. Again, I'm sure in a couple of years it'll be fine, and they'll have this great haptic touch feature, and it'll pop out, and you won't have.
You know what? I'm not even sure that's true. I think this is their escalation away from Macs. Oh,
but aren't they? Wait a minute, but Paul. Wait a minute. Aren't we getting the best Mac desktops of all time coming soon? Maybe.
That guy has turned into such a blowhard. I don't even know where to start with this stupidity.
So
I look.
This is a response, right? To
let me read. Yeah, okay. Let me read from my notes.
So this is the response to. And listen, I go to 9 to 5 Mac every day. I'm a Mac user.
Who doesn't?
I'm a Mac user. I have an iPad in front of me. I don't have an iPhone because I refuse to join the cult totally. I have a MacBook. I get it. I get why it's great. They're beautiful devices. Macs in general. They're beautiful devices. No, wait. They're beautiful. They're beautiful devices.
I want a device that was designed after 2012. Did they sell one of those? No. The Mac Mini hasn't been updated from a design standpoint since 2010. The iMac hasn't been updated since 2012.
No, not the computer. Forget about the computer. I'm saying as a Mac user, I appreciate that it's a nice looking laptop and they work well, and I have my reasons to use it. But
okay.
when you have Apple apologists, Mac apologists, stating in reviews that I was astonished that this is not a great device, this MacBook Pro.
Right.
That is a major problem.
At least it's not expensive.
At least it's not. At least, Paul. At least it's affordable for the common man.
Yeah, it's affordable what you get.
It's affordable for what you get. I love that. That's a great. The Bugatti is really affordable if you have the money.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a. Listen, again, it's still a premium device and it's still better than 90% of the stuff on the market. But it is
I
a
disagree
step
with
backwards.
that. Actually, that's the problem. It's not. that keyboard and that stupid touchpad make that
Yes.
untrue. It's unusable in its current state.
Okay,
I have no idea.
I'm going to tell you. Do you know why I buy Macs? Because they're consistent. Okay, not anymore. That is seriously. They're consistent. I know how it's going to feel. I know that the keyboard is going to be good. I know the display is nice. I know that it's going to look good. Now, they've taken the consistency out of the reason why they sell. I have no.
It's as thin as a pencil, Andrew. Try typing on a pencil.
Yeah,
Jesus.
I'm not brand loyal. I will buy what works the best. And if this is not working the best, I'm not going to buy it.
They're like an SNL skit, and you think, how far could they take this? You make fun of them for years and years for their hyper focus on thinner. Oh, now it's so thin you can't type on it. 2 years ago, if SNL or The Onion or anybody had come up with a little fake Apple ad and said, "We made this thing so thin you can't even type on it anymore," it would have even been funny. But you know what? They did it.
Yeah.
Like this company is out of control.
Well, you know what happens? Like you look at Sylvester Stallone, you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, they become stereotypes of who people perceive them to be. That is what Apple has become.
Yeah, but the difference is Sylvester Stallone cannot stand that he became that stereotype. If you actually look into this guy, he's well educated, he's a good writer, and he's been playing these lunkheads. And there's a lot of stories about this guy now where he's like, I really regret doing these Expendable movies because people think I'm a freaking idiot.
Yeah.
And he's not that person. Apple doesn't regret it. They freaking embrace it.
Yeah.
You know, they think they're.
I genuinely.
Oh, by the way, Andrew. Oh my God, Andrew.
Yes.
Oh my God.
What?
Oh my God, Andrew. A couple weeks ago on the show, I explained how if you go back to an earlier MacBook Pro introduction and watch it, thinking about the new one, they're describing the new computer, right? Remember?
Yeah.
All right, and I told you how
the 2012 model,
yeah, the Retina one, because you have destroyed me inside, and now I've become like a watcher of Apple keynotes, and I do little else in my free time. I also mentioned to you that I watched the original iMac introduction from 1998. I just watched this last night. This is a fact. You can look this up. It's amazing. When he describes how they are leaving behind legacy ports like the Apple, whatever the ADB, whatever the thing was, and I don't know if they had Serial Apparel. I don't know what they had on Macs, but they left behind their legacy ports to go to USB. What was the word he used for this decision, Andrew? Can you imagine?
What was the word?
Courage.
Oh yeah, it took courage. Yeah.
You're saying this is you're telling me this is common knowledge.
What for the last?
Because remember when they dropped the headphone jack for the iPhone, that was the word that Phil Schiller used, and he was mocked for it. He got that from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs used it with the iMac. It was literally the same.
With the iMac.
This is the iMac. This is like 18 years ago, dude. Yeah. This is like
it took courage.
He said courage.
You know
that's where that came from.
Do you know what the most insulting part was? I couldn't believe they used that term. So they referred to taking the headphone jack out as courage, right? That was the whole thing. Sure. They were there. They took the risk. They spoke about courage, and at the end of the event, they had that song by I forgot what's her name.
Oh, that weird woman,
Sia.
Yeah.
Okay, they had that performance piece.
Yep.
That is dedicated to the people that were killed in the Orlando nightclub.
Right.
The entire so you are now using the term. Listen, and I'm not one of these people that hyper focuses on words, but it's such a smug.
No,
it's such a
you don't speak for a living or anything.
I don't speak for a living or anything and break down everything that's happening now.
Why would you ever focus on words? Yeah, go on.
It's such a smug asshole Apple thing to do.
Apple. That's Apple. They're unbearable. I know. It makes it hard.
Courage. First of all, I thought that performance piece was.
Everyone who's like an Apple goon, like the Apple blogger type guys, the little Apple apologists, they're all over my world, unfortunately. I take a small solace, not really, but I understand that the little part of them is dead inside because of this stuff. Like they can try to justify it. They can try to act like Apple's the greatest company on earth. They're doing good for mankind, blah, blah, blah. They're not. And, it's like all these things, it really piles on and makes it hard, because honestly, like the iPhone is a good device. Like I really like it. I recommend it. I mean, overall, But the stuff like this makes it hard.
Yeah.
You know, it really does. And if you can sit there with a straight face and say, no, Paul, it doesn't, it's easy, there's something wrong with you.
Oh,
like
man.
you're just broken inside. Like it makes it hard to support that company.
I really
does.
I really feel like it's like
Apple was the worst thing about 2016, Andrew. I think that's what we've arrived at. It was Apple.
I mean, just
Apple's the reason the Note 7 exploded, Andrew.
well, they did it. Yeah,
I have no doubt about it.
You know, to kind of, I mean, this is on the bonus show. So, do you now looking at Apple? How much have they veered off from the original Steve Jobs vision?
This is a weird thing to say.
Do you think the things that are happening now? Do you think the mistakes that they're making would have been made because?
I can't.
Is it because of Steve's?
No,
I guess influence.
First of all, remember, this guy had incredible success with the iPod, and then astronomical success with the iPhone. The thing he wasn't able to do that wouldn't have made a difference is the iPad was never going to be the next iPhone. So it saw a little bit of success right away, and then it's tanked ever since. It's like 2.5 years straight of falling revenues and unit sales, whatever. That was something Steve Jobs wasn't going to fix. If the question is whether Steve Jobs would have released this exact MacBook Pro in this period of time, if Steve Jobs would have released the Apple Watch or whatever, it's kind of beside the point. I mean, Steve Jobs kind of said or did say this, Tim Cook, don't think like what would Steve do? You make the right decisions for yourself. I mean, he had a style that was very tough, in many ways, and they would have made other mistakes. I mean, I think there's an inevitable nature to Apple's decline that they just can't avoid. That once you have one product that's 2/3 of your revenues, and you're the biggest company on earth, you have nowhere to go but down. But more important, you can't do anything but play the safe game, And I don't think he could have changed that. And so, I don't know. As special as he was in many ways, he was also a deeply tortured and broken person, and I think he would have imploded on his own regardless. I think he was very lucky.
Tim Cook is the guy behind the manufacturing and pumping these devices out and putting it out on the market. I mean, he really attributed to the boom period of Apple in the late 2000s.
He was the Steve Ballmer of that organization, not because his job was exactly the same, but he played that same backroom role.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs brought in Tim Cook and said, look, we got to solve this issue. We've got too many products sitting in store shelves and sitting in warehouses that aren't being sold. And how do we lessen the time to market? How do we reduce the amount of inventory and time? And how do we make things the cheapest possible way going forward? And all of the stuff that they're doing now in China is because of Tim Cook.
Yeah.
And it's the reason they have such astronomical margins. And everything I just described is like a business processes kind of thing. It has nothing to do with being innovative.
He's a brilliant guy. Products. He's a very, very smart guy, and he's
Here's one thing that Steve Jobs wouldn't have done. You don't want to know the big difference? I bet, and this will be the thing I think that maybe we'll be able to look back on as kind of a fact. Steve Jobs wouldn't have put Johnny Ives in charge of software.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what? That's
he
actually because
they were close partners. They worked on hardware. When Scott Forstall imploded and refused to apologize for Apple Maps, Tim Cook fired him. I bet Steve Jobs wouldn't have fired him, and he might still be there today, putting his dark magic, And by the way, Apple shifted to a very different kind of software, which was kind of Windows Phone-esque. Lots of white space, lots of white, frankly, just white color. Clean design, thin fonts. Remember, they did all caps on the keyboard for one release.
Yeah.
This is all Johnny Ive bullshit, and that never would have happened under Steve Jobs. Never.
What? Though, you look at some of the stuff.
I think that's the big difference.
You know what wouldn't have happened with Steve Jobs? I'll tell you right now. I'll give you one. Which version of Windows was it? Oh, wow. Which version of Windows did they put the photo app on, Paul? Which version of Mac OS was it that they added that Photos app, that they removed the iCloud, the mobile, what is it, the iLife suite?
Right,
they killed the iPhoto and the iLife stuff, and then they put Photos. And the whole thing was they're streamlining this with kind of the idea that you have behind iOS, and, the Photos app is going to be a big part of this. They didn't release the Photos app with the release of the operating system.
Well, I actually, as you're saying,
that
here's the
is
thing.
a major thing that you normally wouldn't have seen happen.
Except that the first version of Mac OS X shipped without a DVD player. I mean,
Mobile Me was a total disaster.
Mobile Me was a freaking disaster. But you know what? Mobile Me was the right idea. And by the way, that thing still lives on in iCloud, and frankly, it works. So whatever. But we all have Mobile Me. I mean, Outlook.com is Mobile Me.
Yeah.
Gmail inbox is Mobile Me. It's basically exchange for.
Or here's another example, right? The portrait mode on iOS.
Oh, that thing would never work. Listen,
do you
don't
think
need
that would have ever shipped?
You have a phone. Listen, you have a phone that has a camera that can do bokeh natively, and you're going to put a special mode on it that you have to switch to where you do it in software, and it doesn't always work right.
Super bokeh.
Oh, no way. No, that's not an effect. It's not a feature. It's a gimmick. That is the stupidest thing I've ever seen them add to a. I'll never use that thing again. It's such a piece of crap. Cameras do that natively. You don't have to do a special thing. And by the way, when the optics of the camera does it,
it's way better.
It looks right. It works. You don't fake it in software. That's when you get the thing where, like, my wife's hair is blending with the tree in the back, so there's this perfect outline of her head until you get over here where her hair kind of curls out and it's all green and brown, instead of like her natural, delineation of her hair. It's stupid. That kind of stuff is, yeah. I know, by the way, I can't, would that have happened under Steve Jobs? I don't think so, but we're getting a little picky on the features. I really think it's the Johnny Ive thing,
Yeah.
This guy has a strength, and that strength is designing hardware. Do that thing. You don't do the software.
Hardware. Just make the.
We're going to find another guy for the software. He's out there.
Yeah.
And by the way, when Apple comes calling, you get the best designers in the world. You don't get, Bob over in the corner. You get the best ones. And so bringing Johnny Ive in on that was a huge mistake. Huge mistake. That might be the biggest mistake.
Now? What do you think the next 5 years looks like for them? Same stuff? Nothing different?
Decline. Looks like decline.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a decline, right? The tablets are declining. The iPad is not this amazing device that everybody saw it to be years ago.
It's all decline.
You know when they will really decline? When the perception of Apple fades away, and we're starting to see chips at that wall of the perception of this premium market.
It just happened.
It just happened, and today was the first shot. Today was the first shot.
It was a bunch of Apple fanboys finally standing up and saying, "This is bullshit. This shouldn't be this way." And I'm over there in the back going, "Guys, I've been saying this for 5 years. Where have you been?" They've been doing this all along. Like you're acting like this is something new. So I don't know. Like I don't really. Apple's so big. Like decline happens gradually. Like I said, it's inertia is a wonderful thing. They'll sell millions and millions and millions of iPhones, deservedly so. They're great phones for years and years to come. Even if they don't really improve anything in an important way. The Mac, I think, is kind of plateaued. I think the iPad is worse than plateaued. Apple Watch is going nowhere fast.
Yeah.
Apple TV doesn't even do 4K. What the hell is that? I don't know. Like the whole thing is like they're an iPhone company.
They don't have to.
That's it. They make iPhones.
That may be the future of them. And you know what? They're going to make some great phones, and they're going to sell billions of these.
Yeah.
They're the most successful phone brand ever. Really. That may be the legacy. That may be the thing that really is what catapults them in the 2020s more than anything else.
I'm not going to worry about that. I'm worried about this year. This year sucked, Andrew. It sucked.
Yeah. Maybe they'll make a car, Paul. Maybe they'll make a car.
They need this to be better.
When is the Apple car happening?
The Apple car. Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
I want the iCar. That's what I want. You know what I wanted to do? I want to drive around this tiny little idiotic thing. And I want it, instead of like honking, I want it to make like a smug sound.
Oh, yeah, it will.
Like I want it to go.
It will make this little.
Just like that. That's what I want.
Here's the problem. You know what the problem with the Apple car is, Andrew? Apple's strength isn't software, and it's not services. It's hardware design. And so these guys making like I don't think they're doing this anymore, but were they to make a car? Doesn't matter. Not the strength.
Please move. Like I said, you know what it is? That South Park episode with the Prius.
Yeah, exactly.
That is the future. That is the future of the Apple Car.
Yep.
Guys, that is it for this week. The last show before Christmas. Are we doing a show next week?
I don't think so.
Okay. What's next week? The 29th?
Let's talk next week.
Let's talk. It might be our prediction show. Or we could do, when are you going to CES? What day?
I don't know. Whatever that Wednesday is.
Oh, you're going on the Wednesday. Okay, so. All right.
Yeah.
All right, we'll figure it out. Guys, go to the website, gfknetwork.com. If you like what we do, fund us. Patreon.com/whatthetech. Paul, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Yes, you too. And here's to a better 2017.
Yes. Cheers skis to that. It'll be a very good year. Guys, let's take a moment.
I look forward to the next iPhone.
I do too. Let's take a moment.
Next iPad.
Yeah, please, let's take a moment and reflect on the year. We love technology. It's a lot of fun.
Could there be a new Apple Watch I could buy? I'd like one of those.
I want the curved one. I want the watch that curves around me and shoots lasers out.
Mm-hmm. It projects a keyboard onto the desk.
I want to be able to just use it like a portal gun. Just go like this and just end up at the house. That's what I want. That is the future of Apple.
What have we done?
Yeah, what have we done? All right, guys. We'll see y'all next week. Take care.